Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. In today's video I'll be showing you how to make this top that you can see on the screen. So you're going to need your main fabric. I used crepe. My crepe is 1 yard. The lining fabric is 1 yard. If you want your top to be longer than the one I saw on the screen, you can use 1.5 because the 1 yard finished for this style. So I'm going to be marking my shoulder line and my vertical measurements. The length of the top is 24.5, and now this is just my bust, under bust and waistline, also my hip line at the edge. So now after all those lines are ruled out, I'm going to mark the start of the top, which is 7 inches. This is where my top is starting from, at my chest. So I'm going to just make this line bold and also indicate it as my chest line or start line. So after that, I'm going to mark my shoulder divided by 2. My shoulder measurement is 16, divided by 2 is 8 inches. I'm marking that here. Then I'm going to mark the width of the strap because I'm adding sleeves to my own. You can add it, you can also leave it out, it's optional. So now when I mark the 3 inches, the width of the neckline will now be 5 inches, as you can see. After that, I'll come down at the edge of the 8 inches mark, and then I'll take my 1 inch down for the shoulder slope, as you can see me doing. I'm also transferring that 8 inches at the top to the start line so that it will be equal when I connect my line back to the top. So now I want this neckline, like this design at the sleeve, or I call it neckline. I want it to have a slant look like that Queen Anne neckline style. So I came out by 2 inches at the edge, and I'm just going to connect that carefully from that 3 inch at the top down to the 2 inch, so to have this slanted sleeve look, slanted neckline. How am I confusing myself? So now after that, I'm going to mark my bust measurement divided by 4 is about 9 1/4 or 9 inches. I'm going to mark that at my start line. Then I'm going to mark my waist measurement divided by 4 at the waistline. Now I'm just going to carefully connect it together like you see me doing. Please, you guys should ignore my half full, I beg. So after that, I'm going to mark my dart line. My bust point 4.5 inches was that straight line, as you can see me doing. So after that, I'm going to mark my hip measurement divided by 4 on that hemline, which is 10 inches, and then I'm going to connect it down to the waistline, because the edge of, like, the end of this top is kind of flared out, like it is not really straight. So after that, I'm going to take my darts on both sides of the dart line. This dart line is actually the bust point, like where the dart will sit on your chest. You measure that and then divide it by 2 because this fabric is on fold, and that is the line that you see there. So now I'm using 1/2 1/4 for my dart. That's what I always use. You can use 1/2 inch or 1 inch or 1.5 inch, depending on your bust size. The bigger the bust, the bigger the measurement you use. So I marked the 1/2 1/4 on the under bust line and also on the waistline. Then I connected them together in a straight line like this. Then at the bust line, I'm going to come down by 1 inch just so the curve of this dart will blend into the bust line and it will not be too sharp. So I'm just going to curve it with broken lines like this into the 1 inch I came down at the bust point. So now after that, I'm going to carefully slant it down to the hem of this top, which is 24.5 inches. I'm just carefully slanting the dart like you see me doing. I'm going to indicate that as well so you know it's the dart. So after that, at the chest line, I'm going to go out by 1/2 inch on both sides so that this dart will be complete, and so that it is going to give the bust more room to sit in after you finish sewing the top. So that's 1/2 on both sides, and I'm just carefully connecting it into the bust line. So after that, I'm going to be marking the total allowance for the dart. It was about 1.5 inches. I'm going to mark that outside the waist measurement, plus my sewing allowance is going to be 3 inches because I'm sewing with 1.5. and the dart allowance 1.5. At the start line, I used 2 inches for the armhole extension, and then I'm going to connect the 3-inch allowance into the 2-inch mark at the start line. I'm not indicating that as the seam allowance. You don't have to use that much allowance like I did. You can always use 1 inch for your sewing allowance. I just like to use 1.5. So at the hip line, I'm using 2-inch allowance. Like I said, you can also use a smaller one, but I just like the shape that it gives when you finish connecting it, like how it flares out. It just gives it a very nice look. My line wasn't straight yet, so I'm just straightening that out and indicating that as a seam allowance. So now we're almost done with the front pattern. If you're not going to add slip, you can just cut it as a tube top at that start line, and that will be all. But I'm going to be adding sleeves to my own. So now I did not mark the chest line here, but I'm going to be correcting that for armhole so that part will not be too tight in your body. If you don't also want to curve it, that's fine, but I'm going to be curving mine. So now from that slant at the top, I just marked my chest line, which is my bust measurement divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. I got about 7.5, and I'm marking that as the new chest line. So now from that armhole, that part I cut out for the armhole, I'm just going to carefully curve it into that chest line. So now I cut out the pattern, and I've also cut it out on my fabric, the crepe, and I'm also going to cut it out on my lining. Why I did this is because I don't want to waste cardboard. I want to use the same front piece pattern to cut out the back piece, and I have a way that I've been doing for some time, but I was skeptical about sharing it here, but I'm going to share it today because I don't want to waste cardboard. So what I do is I just place the fabric, like the pattern together, let the side that is touching, that I did not cut out, touch each other. Like the only thing I moved from this pattern was the front dart. So I'm going to try to cover it up like it's never happened. That's how I usually do. So I'll take a piece of cardboard, placing the patterns together that they are touching each other at the part that I did not cut out. Sorry if I'm confusing you. I'm going to take out a new cardboard and I'm going to cover it. You can tape it, you can pin it, however you like. Then I'm going to transfer the lines just to cover it like the dart never happened. Yeah, I forgot to cut out the sleeve. I'm cutting out the sleeve because it will be difficult to sew it if the sleeve is joined together to the pattern. So I'm going to attach the sleeve separately. So now as I've ruled it out like this, I'm going to retake my dart line, that is my bust point, which is 4.5. My bust point is 9 inches or 8. I like using 4.5. So 4.5 what I'm using now for the bust point. Also for this back, don't forget to add the zip allowance. When I'm cutting, I'll add it, so don't forget it. So this is how it's looking from the back. The pattern is still complete, nothing is missing, nothing is taken out of it. It's just, we just covered up the darts. I'm just indicating the bust, under bust, and the waistline, so I can remember what each line represents. So now I'm going to take out 1/2 inch at the waistline for the back dart. This is the only dart I'm taking out, the 1/2 inch on both sides. And I'm going to slant it into the lines of the bust and the hip. So I'm just measuring my measurements to confirm that it is still correct. The bust measurement divided by 4, waist divided by 4. So now also for the hip, I'm going to measure that to make sure it's correct. Then the dart allowance is 1 inch that I took out. I'm going to be replacing that 1 inch by the side plus my sewing allowance of 1.5 inch, that is 2.5 in total. So now the only difference between this back and the front is just 1/2 inch, because the 2 inch at the chest line will still be the same and the 2 inch at the hip line will still be the same for me. So I just arranged it and like curved it into the new allowance at the hip, and I'm going to cut that out. So it's simple like that. If this is confusing for you, you can always use a new pattern paper or a new cardboard to draft out the back, but this is how I did it simply. As you can see, it did not affect anything, I just covered it up. So after I cut it out, I just folded my fabric in two and I laid the pattern on it. So I'm going to cut it out with the 1 inch zip allowance included, and then 1/4 inch, like very little allowance by the side I'm going to join together and at the top side. So also for the neckline part that's going to join to my sleeve, I cut it out on fold, 2 piece for the front and also 2 piece for the back. Don't worry, the measurement is the same thing for the front and the back. So I cut out lining also for the body of the top, like for the top. I'm also going to cut linings for the sleeve part, the neckline part as well. So after that, you're going to join the pieces together at the dart line. So this is for the back, I'm just separating it, then I'm going to be joining it at this dart line. I'll just find the right side and then place it right side facing right side and then stitch at this dart line. Like I've held it together now. You do that for the other side as well. And also for the front, you open up the part that's unfold and then the left and right side you're going to join it at this dart line. You also do the same thing for the lining piece and then for this neckline piece. So now I have joined the front piece together, as you can see. I've also joined the lining fabric together. The lining is not matching exactly, but it's going to be on the inside, so it doesn't really matter that much. So now I'm going to be joining the main fabric to the lining on all sides, but I'm going to leave a little opening by the side. I'm going to use to turn it over and iron. The same thing for the back too. You're going to sew it everywhere and leave a little bit of opening by the side. Okay, so after this now we are going to be joining the shoulder seams together. If you have your pattern piece too, you can use this to place and like arrange this so you don't get confused at this point. But what I'm doing basically is I'm trying to align the front and the back shoulder seams together so that I'll know where it's starting from and where it's ending. So because of the slant, it's easier to understand this. The side that is at the highest point is where I'm going to start sewing from, and then it slants to the edge of the shoulder seam. So I'm going to take the front piece and just lay on top of the back piece like you see me doing, and I'm going to pin the front piece down to the back piece. But as you can see, they have lining and main fabric, although I use the same fabric for everything, but I'm going to just pin the front on the main fabric of the back shoulder seam. I will be talking too much, but please just look at what I'm doing. It may be easier to understand it that way. So I'm using the pins to secure it so that I don't get confused. I'm securing the front to the back, but I'm leaving the back lining untouched. Like this opening is going to be where I sew it from. Just watch and see. From the back piece, that opening, I'm going to pass my hand through that, my fingers to that place, and then push all the raw edge into that hole, and then carefully turn it inside like this. And then I just arrange everything so it lays flat and equal. You can use your pins again to rearrange the pinning. Now you're going to pin everything together, you're not leaving anyone out. After that, you do the same thing for the other side, and then here I have stitched it and I'm going to flip it to the right side. You don't have to worry about the part that is the front and the back. Since I cut it with the same pattern, they may look alike, so just pick one that you want for the front and one you want for the back, because they're basically the same thing. So now this is it. The allowance is at the back of this shoulder seam, and this is the front that is facing the camera. That's the front I picked to myself. So this is how it's looking like. So after you've done that, you're going to put that away, and then you're going to join the top at the sides, joining the front and the back together basically. So when you are joining, because of that slit, you're going to stop at the waist or 1 inch after the waistline, and then the rest will be for the open slits by the side. Just stop it wherever you want. It must not be at the waist. I'm also gonna to add the zip, because the design I added at the chest, I added it last minute because I wanted the top to be complete and fitted on my body before I add it, so I'll not end up cutting it too long or too short. So now this is how it's looking. The slit, you can iron it. You can also make a little stitch at the end to secure the slit open, but you don't have to worry because it will always stay open once you iron it. You can use hemming gum to just secure it there. So now after adding the zip and everything, it's time to add the sleeve and the band. I think I'll call it a band. So now I'm just going to start the band ½ inch before the zipper allowance on both sides. If you want yours to just be a basic tube, you can stop the top here. The top is finished at this point. If you want to add a flace sleeve, you can make any kind of design you want. It must not be this exact type, but if you want to make this type, you can continue watching the tutorial. So my round chest was around 36 inches. I'm going to be cutting out like 37 or 38 because I'm going to be folding the sides of this band for a clean finish. So the wideness of this was the same thing with my chest line, like 36. I made mine 38. This one I'm cutting out now. But for the length, I forgot to measure it, but this would be around 8 inches. But I still folded the end of this band. Just make whatever length you want, however you want it to be. Just cut it like that. But I did not measure mine, but I think it's around 8 inches. So I use hemming gum to fold the end of this band, as you can see from the video. Now it's time to attach the sleeve and the band to the tube top. So I just took the end of the sleeve and I just pinned it this way. I'm pinning it on the wrong side of the top. And if you're concerned about where you place the sleeve, you can place it close to the dart, or you can take away like the allowance you did for the armhole from the armhole first, then you place the sleeve after that. So now for the band, I just folded it into two, mark the middle, and I also mark the middle on the top because I want to start placing this band from the midpoint. So I'm just placing it on the right side first so you can see what I'm doing properly. But I'm going to flip it over because that's the best way to sew it. That's the way I'm going to be sewing it. I'll just flip it over. The sleeve is under it. Like the sleeves, they are sandwiched in between the band and the top. I'm just going to pin it carefully all around the chest of this top. Okay, when you're pinning, please make sure you're always checking that it is correct what you're pinning, so you're not making any mistakes once you go and sew it. Also, you're going to pin the strap for the back the same way you pin the front. Pin it carefully like this, and then you're also going to use the band to cover it up. I had to go back to correct my armhole allowance because it was too big. The 2 inch I added was big. I had to reduce it so it will not be bulky at the armhole side. So if you remember from the pattern, I cut out armhole curve, but this band does not have it. So you just sew it straight normally like this, and then when you're done, you're going to make the curve from the armhole. Like you're going to cut the curve out of this band by following the same curve that is on the top. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but I might put a video so that you understand what I'm saying. Then for the zip, I did not sew it all through the first time. Like I had to lose it again because after you've joined this band design, when you fold it, you realize that it's folding some of the fabric, some of the top like this. So you're going to fold it completely like this and then place the zip on top of it before you sew the zip. That way everything will just lay flat at the back. There are other ways to join this band, but I felt it would be too complicated to explain for this video. That's why I'm using this simple method. There are ways that I used to add this band that will not have you doing all this extra zip allowance work and all that, but you can still do it this way and the top will still come out okay. So after all that, I added a teacup sleeve. So I had made and cut the teacup sleeve off camera, so I'm just showing you how I made the pattern with this cardboard. So you're going to fold it into 2. If your fabric is enough, you can fold it into 4 as if you're about to make a circle skirt. But the cardboard is small. I'm just going to show you how to draft it on fold when it's folded into 2. You can also fold it into 4 like this, like I said earlier. But because of the length, it just depends on how long you want your sleeve to be, whether it's 4 inches, 5 or 6 inches. But let's just draft it folded into 2 first. That is, you're only going to be cutting 1, because when you fold into 4, you're going to be cutting 2. Now I'm going to measure both sides of this fold. Here is 7 inches, it is longer. The other part looks shorter, so I'm going to measure it as well, and that part is giving around 6 inches. Now that 6 inches I'm going to use all around this cardboard, like when I'm cutting out a circle skirt, like how you take the measurement from the top part round like this. I flipped it over because as you can see, that part was open. I want the mid side to be on fold, which is how I flipped it over now. This part I'm marking here is on fold, and that is going to be the mid section of the sleeve. So after that, you're done with the sleeve, but at the edge of this cardboard, like the hem of this sleeve, you're going to go up by 1/2 inch. You can also choose to not add this slant, but this just gives it a nice look. So after you've taken the slant, you just cut out this pattern and then you're done. So the next step will be to hem it. You can take it to your sewing machine, fold the hem and sew on it. You can also notch the midpoint so that you know how to properly place this at the middle of the shoulder seam, on the shoulder seam. So that's the end of the tutorial. When you're done, this is what the top is looking like. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for watching this tutorial up to this point. I'll see you in the next one. Bye and have a lovely week.